What's up, everybody? Welcome to the PickSix podcast, CBS Sports daily NFL podcast. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host. It is Wednesday, June the 30th, and we are going to talk top 10 linebackers on today's show with Jordan Dajani. Tons of position rankings in the field. In the field. What am I talking about? The field. In the feed. To me, podcast, Jordan. I gotta. I would say I've got to go on vacation because I need a break. I just need a break from everything. What's up, man? How you doing?
What's up, Will? Yeah, I appreciate all the hard work that you're doing, man. We talked tight ends a few days ago. That was fun. Ready to get into some linebackers.
I'm not going to claim that I'm working hard, but I will say that I'm at least present.
You're doing the rounds on all these podcasts, man.
Yeah, we're cranking them out. We're cranking out the podcast. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and hit the like button and tell us who your top linebacker in football is. Also, make sure to check out John Breach's PickSix podcast newsletter. He and Cody Benjamin team up to bring it daily to your inbox. You'll get the best stories from professional football. And of course, you'll probably get a link to the top 10 linebackers if you're reading it today. If you give me the toughest names for you, Jordan, to leave off of your top 10 linebacker list.
Yeah, there were several, and I worked all day putting this top 10 list together. You should see the Slack dialogue between me and Debo. It's me adjusting my list probably 40 times in the span of like 4 hours. So a couple that were hard to leave off were Matt Milano, Zach Cunningham from Vandy, who I absolutely love, and then Blake Martinez as well. So those three guys did not make the cut. They're on the outside looking in. Pretty tough to leave them off, though.
Okay, that's fair. Linebacker's weird, too, because the position has just completely changed over the past definitely 10 years, but even the past 5 years, right? You have just a different style of player that matters. I mean, like a Luke Kuechly, maybe more of a throwback, or like a guy. He would have been the top of this list or near the top of this list when he was playing. He's obviously retired now, but a guy who more of a Ray Lewis type, right? Or a Brian Urlacher type. I mean, those guys were winning or in Super Bowls not that long ago. I mean, I guess we've been doing this for a while, but I mean, I was covering Ray Lewis for the Ravens when I started CBS, and you just don't see as many of those guys in football anymore. And that's primarily because of you need more versatility in your linebackers. And I think this list definitely reflects that. And starting at number 10 with Tremaine Edmunds.
Yep, he was a guy that I wanted to put in my top 10. He ended up making the cut. It was kind of tough over some of the names that I previously mentioned. He injured his shoulder in the season opener last year. He rebounded to finish with another impressive campaign, though, 119 combined tackles. That was tied for number 8 among inside linebackers, and he's tied his career high with 2 sacks. Another stat that I kind of leaned on was the approximate value tool that Pro Football Reference does, an AV. So he posted an AV of 9, which ranked number 7 among inside linebackers. So you could argue a lot of his stats, apart from tackles, didn't come up to par, but obviously a lot of the statisticians valued his play highly. So if we were ranking linebackers still just off of last year's stats in 2020, he probably would have made the top 10. But I do expect him to take a step forward in 2021. Think about it. He's entering just his 4th season, and he's 23 years old, right?
Crazy. He's so young.
Yeah, the Bills are a team on the rise. I feel like Edmunds is a player that is doing the same. It's also interesting because you saw the Bills drafted 2 pass rushers with their first 2 picks this offseason. I'm excited and intrigued to see how that affects and how that helps Edmunds do what he does as the middle linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Sean McDermott defenses, I mean, you mentioned Luke Kuechly, they had Shaq Thompson, of course, and Thomas Davis, and the latter two certainly more of the versatile modern type of quasi-safety, quasi-linebacker type of players. But linebackers are key in Sean McDermott defenses, and that's why Matt Milano, almost honorable mention, and then Tremaine Edmunds. I just think he's so young. I mean, he came in at 19, almost, I'm not saying he's Tyron Smith, who, but the guys that come in that young and can play at Pro Bowl levels that early on, I mean, he's got 3 more years before his physical prime. He could be absolutely elite, and making all pros and stuff like that, taking a huge step forward in the next couple of years. And that, he's not like he he makes some mistakes, but I almost think you can chalk that up to youth. And I agree with you that this is, as you're trying to project forward and look at those linebackers, that is absolutely a guy that could make a leap forward. Deion Jones for you at number 9.
Yeah, I like this player a lot. I mean, he entered the NFL as what was, considered a top cover linebacker, but his 2020 campaign proved that it's really hard to be consistent in that role as an expert coverer, if you will, in coverage. Especially when you don't have help around you. We know the Falcons defense was not impressive in 2020. I mean, you look at his first 2 years, he recorded 6 interceptions and 21 passes defense in just 2 years, but still had an AV of 9 in 2020, which was the second highest of his career. So not a terrible campaign. He also had a kind of a difference in his role that he played in his defense, right? He saw more action pressuring the quarterback. He recorded a career high 10 quarterback hits and a team leading 4.5 sacks. So he has recorded at least 106 tackles in seasons where he has played at least 15 games, and he's really proven to be a well-rounded linebacker, open to doing whatever's asked of him, and that's been pretty unique and good for when it comes to these defensive changes that the Falcons are undergoing this offseason. But got to bring this up. This is why I love this kid. His insane playmaking ability. No linebacker has recorded more interceptions, 11, than he has since entering the NFL in 2016, and he also has 2 more touchdowns than any other linebacker during that same time frame. So he had 84 return yards off of 2 interceptions in 2020, 165 yards in his rookie season to go along with 2 touchdowns. He's averaging 1 touchdown per year. That's pretty impressive for a linebacker. He's impressive when he gets the ball in his hands, no matter how rare that is. So he's an athletic guy. He excels in coverage. I think he's kind of the full package.
I think people probably forget this, but I feel like until Tom Brady and James White happened, that Deion Jones had a decent shot of being Super Bowl, whatever the 28-3 Super Bowl was, Super Bowl 51, I guess, the Super Bowl 51 MVP. Like he was wrecking shop in that game. I think he had 9 tackles, tackle for loss, forced fumble. He was flying all over the place, and that was his rookie season, obviously. And I tend to think that with a guy like Deion Jones, that you could potentially see someone like Dean Pease, who is his whole thing with his defense is not that he needs to have, it's blitz heavy. He blitzes like crazy. He creates pressure without having maybe the most elite talent on defense. It's what he did in Tennessee. It's what he's done his entire career. And I think you could see Deion Jones being a guy that is utilized in a lot of those pressure situations, or is sitting back there with his coverage skills, able to take advantage of the pressure situations and create some havoc and create some turnovers. So a very good chance that he is actually even higher because of the coaching change when we look at this list next year. Demario Davis checking out at number 8.
Yeah, some may have thought that Davis reached his apex when he was 30 years old. He got his first team All-Pro selection, but he didn't regress much in 2020. I mean, 119 combined tackles, 4 sacks, earned an AV of 14, which ranked 5th among linebackers. He may have been a late bloomer, but he's involved into the leader of one of the best defenses in the NFL over the past few years. I mean, he doesn't miss tackles much. He's solid in coverage. He knows how to read and react to movement quickly, no matter what kind of role he's playing on defense. So Demario Davis, it's great to see him, turn into the star that many thought he would be when he was kind of bouncing around with the Jets. Somebody who definitely deserves a top 10 spot on this list.
Yep. No qualms about it at all. The guy who's the signing flew under the radar and then ended up being a very nice pull for them. Number 7, I am torn because I love Roquan Smith. I am worried that he is not going to live up to what we hoped he would be when he came out of Georgia. I think I actually bet him to win Defensive Player of the Year last year. That obviously didn't work out at all. He is just the way he flies around and the way he piles up like every possible stat. And it just, I want him to be what I thought he would be coming out of Georgia. And I'm worried that he might not, but is this more of a projection or more of a, thinking like, all right, maybe he'll finally have that breakout season? Is that what you're looking at here at number 7?
Yeah, it was kind of a little bit of both. I mean, he had a pretty good rookie year and then took a bit of a backward step in 2019, and he kind of returned to form in 2020. It was his career year, right? 139 combined tackles. That ranked number 5 among inside linebackers. His 4 sacks ranked 3rd, and he led all inside linebackers with 18 tackles for loss. He also ranked 3rd with a career high 7 passes defensed. His AV of 15 was tied for 2nd among all inside backers in 2020. So,
did have a breakout. What am I? I'm an idiot. I guess.
Yeah, I was.
Oh, you know what happened? Okay,
Yeah.
I blacked out for a second there. 2019 is when he took that personal leave of absence.
Right.
I was thinking it was last year for some reason. And you know what happened is last year I was too busy hating on the Bears to recognize that Roquan Smith was having a great year. I bet on him to win Defensive Player of the Year in 2019, not last year. Okay, I'm an idiot.
It's all right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. I was a little confused too, but yeah, Roquan Smith.
Roquan Smith was effing awesome last year. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he was very
Roquan Smith's year last year. Damn it.
Yeah, he was great in 2020, and that's why people are very excited for what this kid's going to do in the future. He seems like he's going to be a legitimate star in this Bears defense, and once they get that quarterback situation figured out, he's going to be a leader on one of the best teams in the NFL, hopefully. So he finally had that bounce back year that people were very curious if that was going to come to fruition or not. So he comes in at number 7 on my list. That was kind of just a middle spot. It could have been number 8. It could have been number 6. Could have even been number 5. I like this kid. I like what he's capable of. He's finally showing some kind of consistency. He's great at both levels of the defense. So he comes in at number 7. He's definitely a top 10 linebacker. I'm excited to see where I want to place him in 2022.
How did I not pay attention to what Roquan Smith did last year? What the hell is wrong with me? What if I swear to God, I think it's just the Bears things. Like the fact that Bears fans were chirping at me, and I just refused to acknowledge anything good about the Bears except for that little stretch where I picked them to win a bunch of games so that they would eventually lose and then potentially fall out of the playoffs or suffer a horrific loss. His AV was like 15. Yeah. Maybe I am just an idiot, obviously, but man, he's only 24.
Right.
And now that I'm thinking about it too, so he had the personal stuff in 2019, and then 2019. Remember, obviously Vic Fangio was the coach in defensive coordinator in 2018, and then switched over to Pagano. And you sort of wonder if it didn't cause him to sort of have an adjustment period there, going from Fangio to Pagano. Now they've got Sean Deasy, who is not Chuck Pagano. They got Chuck Pagano retired. I'll be curious to see how he adjusts to a 3rd defensive coordinator in 4 years, but at 24 with the kind of season that he had that I completely ignored, obviously, maybe he could be a top 5 linebacker next year. Jeez.
And I want to say this too, like the reason I didn't step in and ask what's going on, because there does seem like there's a narrative around him that's like, okay, we had a great 3rd year, but can he keep up that? Are we going to see another step back? He's entering an important contract here, really. It'll be interesting to see if he can kind of keep that up. But there is a weird narrative that kind of surrounds him. But to me, he's a dynamic playmaker.
What is he talking about? Projecting. What? He's great last year.
Yeah. I get what you're saying, though. No problem.
Yeah, man, I tell you what, that 2018 draft class too. I know that, obviously Josh Rosen is disappointed, and we still have questions about Sam Darnold. Saquon Barkley needs to have a bounce back year. But when you look at some of the players that are coming out of that draft class, I mean, Baker Mayfield, first overall, has shown certainly flashes. Denzel Ward looked great. He was in the top 10 list for cornerbacks that BMAC did. Quentin Nelson, Josh Allen, Roquan, Minka, Vita Vea. I mean, they have some serious. Tremaine Edmonds, we mentioned on there. Derwin James, Jair Alexander, top 2 cornerback. Frank Ragnow was a top. I mean, there are some serious players that came out of that draft class. Calvin Ridley, Lamar Jackson, obviously, has a chance to be a very special draft class. Just worth noting as I try to distract everybody from my lack of Roquan Smith knowledge. The last man to see me before I fell off a scooter in Nashville. Do you know who it was?
Was it number 6 on my list?
Devin White. That's right. I was actually had been to interview Devin White, who's a fantastic player and loves horses. And I went to interview him. And I was like, man, I rode a bird over here. It's kind of crazy. He's like, oh, a bird. He's like, those things are pretty cool. I was like, whatever you do not get on one until you sign your rookie contract, because they are really dangerous. Leave the interview, boom, fall off a scooter in the middle of Nashville. So that's my favorite Devin White story. But look, this is a guy that 2 years in, it looks like we were talking about it throughout these top 10 lists. Jason Light has had a lot of guys appear on these lists. Whether it's Tristan Wirfs, Vita Vea, obviously Tom Brady's going to make on a list. He's done a heck of a job drafting, and Devin White, when you look at, because I believe the Raiders took Cleveland Farrell right in front of the Bucs, who took Devin White. And that looks like one of the biggest mistakes in recent draft history, because White is an absolute game changer and just a playmaker on defense.
Yeah, Will, first off, don't feel embarrassed. I think every time I go out in Nashville, the over-under of people falling off scooters is like 1.5, and I always take the over. But Devin White at number 6, I'm telling you, I think he's my favorite player on this list, even though he comes in at number 6. His 140 combined tackles ranked 4th in the NFL among inside linebackers, 9 sacks ranked 1st, 15 tackles for loss ranked 2nd, and his 16 quarterback hits ranked 1st. His AV of 15 was tied for 2nd in the league. It's impressive because he missed Tampa Bay's first playoff game against Washington and still recorded 38 combined tackles, 2 picks, and recovered 2 fumbles in 3 playoff games. I mean, he stepped up his game when the games mattered most. Only 4 players have recorded over 200 tackles and at least 10 sacks in their first 2 seasons since sacks became an official stat, and White is one of them. I mean, just 23 years old. He's an emerging star in this league, and he's not the only Buccaneers inside linebacker on this list.
No, he is not. Man, I mean, he's 23, and he's 2 ridiculous seasons. Their defense is freaking loaded, and Devin White is one of the key components to it. I mean, he's a perfect Todd Bowles linebacker, and he's just going to keep getting better. You know what? If I was worth anything as a podcast host, I would have said, we'll find out who it is after the break, which we'll now do. Jordan set me up with perfect segue, and I botched it. I'm just off my game. Lavonte David, number 5, another Buccaneers linebacker on the list, and well deserving of it. I would argue that Lavonte David, if you're trying to pick most underrated players in the NFL of the last 5 years, Lavonte David is there. He's the Robert Woods of linebackers.
Yeah, I mean, he was a really good feel-good story in 2020. I mean, he suffered through terrible seasons with the Buccaneers, and that's why he wasn't getting a lot of praise, because who was watching the Buccaneers and their defenses weren't necessarily that great. But he remained motivated, and he showed up when they finally got the chance at a Super Bowl. Only one NFL player has recorded more tackles in the last decade than David, and that guy's later found on this list at, I think, number 1. So Lavonte David, a seasoned veteran, versatile guy. He hasn't slowed down at age 31, 117 combined tackles, 1.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 12 tackles for loss. Watch the film on this guy in the postseason. He's there to make a difference. He remains motivated. He's just one of the best in the game. And it's pretty impressive that he hasn't slowed down at all. And I don't anticipate that to happen in 2021 either, which is why I love Devin White, but I had to put Lavonte David over here because of the feel-good story aspect of the 2020 season. And also, I don't think this guy's going to slow down either. He's the captain of that defense. He's the heart and soul of the Buccaneers' defensive side of the ball, while Tom Brady holds down the other part of it. That's why I'm excited about the Buccaneers' chances to repeat this season.
I think the other argument too for David over White is that I think Devin White's awesome no matter where he plays, but I don't know if he acclimates as quickly to that defense, to the position, and has as much success without a guy like Lavonte David sitting there telling him, with like when you have that help, when you have a mentor type a similar style player who does the all around stuff, and who, just like, if you're a young pass rusher, it helps to have a veteran on the opposite side. So I'm with you on the standings there in terms of the Tampa linebackers. Here's a guy at number 4, and he had a down year. Also I mentioned the 2018 draft class. Also in the 2018 draft class, Darius Leonard could have been Defensive Player of the Year his rookie season. He's just a beast. You know what? Did he not have a down year last year? It was 2019 was his down year. Did I do it again?
He missed 5 games last year. I mean, it wasn't the most amazing year, if you're saying that, but it's hard to meet expectations when you come into the NFL and put up the numbers he did in his rookie season. So I understand why you're questioning that. But yeah, it's funny. At number 4, I almost didn't even include him on this list because he technically plays Will, right? He plays the weak side linebacker. And I found a tweet of him from like 2018 saying that he's not an outside linebacker. He's a weak side, inside linebacker. And I'm like, okay, well, I think that's a outside linebacker, but I was like, okay. Anyway, I look back at what we did last year and we included him on this list and he's damn good. So I put Darius Leonard in the top 4. And I'll be honest, Will, I even feel a little dirty of him at number 4 because he's just such a monster. I feel like he's definitely one of the top 3 guys. But I mean, he earned his second first team All-Pro honor in 2021, 132 combined tackles, 3 sacks, 7 passes defense. Again, it's hard to continue to meet expectations when you make so much noise when you come into the league as a rookie. It's so hard if you're not going to maintain 163 tackles or what have you. But our opinion hasn't changed when it comes to that. This guy is one of the best linebackers, one of the best defenders in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you look at Darius Leonard's stats. Oh, no interceptions and only 3 sacks, Darius. Like, what are you doing? You know, what a terrible season. Looking at the odds for Defensive Player of the Year. We talked about this on our mailbag podcast on Monday, and we had also mentioned it, I think, earlier in the week, maybe when we were looking at cornerbacks. But Darius Leonard at 30-1, not a terrible bet.
No, I love that.
You know, you need to have a guy on a team with a winning record that makes the playoffs. That's just how these awards work. You know, they're not going to give it to a defender on a crappy team. And you need to have a guy who piles up stats all over the place. And if Darius Leonard plays 15 or 16 games, he's probably going to have a couple picks. He's probably going to have, 3 to 5 sacks, and he could lead the league in tackles like he did in his rookie season. If he does that, he's a very good Defensive Player of the Year candidate. A little bit older. He came out of South Carolina State. He'll be 26 later in late July, but still, 4th year, athletic prime. You don't want to say there's a breakout coming because he's already been great for 3 years, but it's entirely possible that he just takes it to another level, and the Colts defense is awesome. I think the addition of DeForest Buckner really helps him as well because it sort of frees him up. You're less likely to get blockers at that second level that he's going to have to deal with. And my only argument here would be that maybe you have Darius Leonard too low. I would probably move him up to 3, maybe 2, but I don't know. Eric Kendricks at 3 instead, though. Explain to me why you take Kendricks over Darius Leonard.
Yeah, I mean, he's a playmaker as well. The coverage aspect is very important in this day and age, right? I mean, if we're making this list 10 years ago, we'd probably have Kendricks a little lower on this list. Linebackers who can cover extremely well, they help their defenses in a big way, and he's one of the best. He has the highest PFF grade of all linebackers since 2019 and was tied for first among all linebackers in interceptions last year with a career high 3 picks. Despite missing 5 games. And even while he missed time, still had 107 combined tackles. So he's an important piece on this defense in general, just not as a cover linebacker. And there's something that I found interesting recently that I read in the Star Tribune. The Vikings gave up at least 390 yards in 4 of their final 5 games with Kendricks out due to injury last season, and allowed 463 yards on the ground in back-to-back losses to the Bears and Saints as well. So Kendricks is a vital piece of that defense, and no linebacker has recorded more passes defense over the past 5 seasons than Kendricks. So I think that, he's somebody who doesn't get enough credit for what he does also in run support because he's seen as an elite cover guy, which is very true. But this is a player that is one of the best linebackers in the NFL, and I try to give him his due by putting him at number 3.
Perfectly fair. And a guy, Kendricks too, it's like him, and you watch Eric Kendricks play, he's so big.
Yeah,
he's huge. Like you see him, you're like, how is this guy moving like this? It's just it's interesting to have a guy like Roquan Smith and a guy like Eric Kendricks on the same list. At the sort of playing a similar position where they just look so different, and that's what's interesting about the linebacker position in the NFL, just how it's sort of evolved that way. I think your top 2 guys are probably no brainers. They both come from the NFC West. And Fred Warner at number 2 and Bobby Wagner at number 1. Bobby Wagner, no surprise he's number 1, but look, he just sort of took over the mantle once Luke Kuechly left as the best linebacker in football. But Fred Warner, man, I mean, he had a absolute, he was already a good player for his first 2 years of his career, but then exploded last year, makes his first Pro Bowl and his first All-Pro, and had a huge season. Any consideration at all to having him topple Bobby Wagner in the rankings here?
Absolutely. A lot of consideration, actually. But I went back to the stats, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to put him over Wagner, then Warner's going to have some stats to back me up here. And I didn't really find it. Warner had an AV that was number 1 overall. That's a great, piece of evidence. He also had more interceptions than Wagner, but Wagner's had more tackles. He had more sacks. He had more tackles for loss. He had more passes defense. Even though he's older, he hasn't showed any signs of regression. So I definitely put some consideration into it. But Fred Warner coming at number 2 is no joke either. And I expect him to be number 1 probably next year. I mean, he was a player. I remember last year we ranked at number 9 on our list. And I think it was Sean said that he was flying under the radar because he was part of a talented defense. And he's becoming more of a household name now, and that will continue into 2021 because some of the 49ers defensive talent has left. And Warner just continues to get better, right? 125 combined tackles, 2 picks, 7 quarterback hits. I already brought up the AV of 19, which was by far better than any other inside linebacker. That's a big part of it too. He earned his first Pro Bowl nod as well as a first-team All-Pro selection. His 367 career tackles are tied for number 7 in the NFL since he entered the league in 2018. He's just 24 years old. He's extremely durable. He hasn't missed a game due to injury. I expect him to come in at number 1 on our list when we do this next year.
Yeah, I mean, look, Bobby Wagner, by the way, I cannot ever talk about Bobby Wagner without mentioning that he once got an MVP vote in a season where he only played 11 games, but he has made 5 consecutive All-Pro teams. He's been a stud for Seattle, even as their defense has trailed off and gotten worse over the last few years. It's just not elite the way it's fine. It's fine defense, but it's not top shelf like it was when he and the Legion of Boom were together. He was sort of flying under the radar when the Legion of Boom were there because the Earl Thomas, Sherman, and Cam Chancellor got all the love. Bobby Wagner's a monster. He just bangs out big season after big season after big season. I think he'll definitely end up being a Hall of Fame linebacker when it's all said and done. I think Kuechly will get in as well. But yeah, Fred Warner, given the age, given how he played last year, the one concern maybe you have is that Robert Saleh leaves and you have to adjust to a new defensive coordinator there in San Francisco, but they should be fine. Kyle Shanahan beefs up his coaching staff. It wouldn't shut me off if Warner was number 1 next year. And those 2 dudes are a problem for NFC West quarterbacks.
Absolutely. And yeah, Wagner, I mean, I think he just turned 31 or turns 31 this week. Still the best inside linebacker in football, stopping the run or defending the pass. I mean, he's elite. And I think his consistency, as you mentioned, is another reason I had to put him at number 1 on our list. I mean, he's missed just 1 game over the last 5 years, I think. Yep. And Levante David and Demario Davis, we brought them up earlier in the podcast. They've been consistent presences on defense over the past 10 seasons, but no player has recorded more tackles than Wagner in that time frame. It's like 1,200 or something. So, I remember putting him at number 1 on our list last year, and I was like, okay, well, maybe this is the time he regresses and we'll have someone new for 2021. No, that didn't come to fruition. And yet I'm on the podcast saying it again, that we may have another guy number 1 in 2022. But again, I went back to the stats and I wanted to make an argument for Fred Warner. I had him at number 1 on my list for some time, but sure enough, looking at the stats and just looking at the film too, and the consistency, the experience, I just had to go with Bobby Wagner. The man's an absolute animal.
There's no reason to get too cute and displace Bobby Wagner from that's when like B-Wags 54 is chirping at you on Twitter, like, you serious, bro? You don't think I'm the number 1 linebacker in football? Because that's, it's like the Kelsey at 1. You don't have to get cute.
I mean, I am pretty cute though. I had Kyle Pitts at my number 4 in my tight end list. So.
You get cute at 4, right? Cute at 1 with Bobby Wagner. It's like that. It's a great list. You did, as we mentioned, the tight ends. You can go check that out in the feed as well, or I think it's in the feed. I get confused as to what is in the feed and what's not. But there's a lot of rankings in the feed. Jordan crushed it with multiple lists. Thanks as always for coming on, dude. Good stuff, and we will talk to you soon.
All right, you're the man, Will. Thank you.